What's the differences for yourselves between like Bitcoin and crypto, and why are you distinguishing Bitcoin, not cryptocurrency?
Yeah, again, it comes back to that educational piece in understanding what Bitcoin is versus what more broadly cryptocurrencies are. The fact that Bitcoin is not managed or owned by any particular entity, it's a protocol, it cannot be manipulated, you cannot, change the fact that there's only 21 million of them. The reality is for all the other cryptocurrencies, that's not the case.
Why is Bitcoin not a Ponzi scheme? I've got all these notes about why Bitcoin's not a Ponzi scheme. So if you're watching it and you're still unsure, do a bit of research. It's definitely not a Ponzi scheme at all. If you're holding Bitcoin or any kind of cryptocurrency, it's like a roller coaster ride. Just hold on, close your eyes for a decade, open them in 10 years, and you'll have a smile on your face, I think. So,
and you've got to have you've got to have a lot of conviction, right? Like, let's say you did wake up the day after and it's dropped 30%. Well, I still have the same number of sats.
Good morning, Mel and Trudy. Welcome to G'day Bitcoin.
Hey, Sean, how you going?
Yeah, good. Such a pleasure to be able to sit down. I had a really good mate, best friend, reach out to me. He sent me a video. He's like, you've got to check this out. And there's you two, and you made 7 News local, and you're selling a property for Bitcoin. I'm like, I have to speak to these two. So Mel and Trudy, welcome to the show. Before we dive into it, I'd just like to hear a little bit about your Bitcoin story. Especially here in Australia, it's pretty unusual for somebody to be selling a house or a plot of land for Bitcoin. So it's a little bit outside the box, which I absolutely love. But how did you get into Bitcoin? How long have you been into Bitcoin? And what is Bitcoin to you?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having us, Sean.
Such a pleasure.
I think my Bitcoin journey first started in about 2020, 2021 when I was teaching, and I thought I was running a really riveting lesson. And I noticed a couple of kids that were on technology, and I thought, what are they doing up the back? Why aren't they totally focused and engaged? And I went up there and I was just a bit curious, and I asked a couple of questions like, what are you doing? And they were talking a little bit about crypto, I suppose, in broad terms. And, that there was this coin that was jumping up by 40% in one day. And I was like, well, that's a bit better than my ComSec app, which is doing nothing. And so I suppose I was just curious and started asking questions, doing a little bit of research, and then came across it then. Probably didn't pay too much attention to it at that point in time, and really got heavily involved, I reckon, in about 2022, 2023, which is when I first bought Bitcoin. And then Trudy and I worked together, and I kind of mentioned it and
and that was my entry point. I'd heard about it previously, but I was pretty dismissive of it. And then when Mel got into it, I really was really dismissive of it. I thought it was a bit of a joke. And I think I've got a bit of a commerce background, and I guess all my sort of rational thinking around how money works kind of kicked in. And I just went, well, what is this and how does it work? So all that commentary that, we're so used to hearing about, that was me. But then over time and through conversation and, going to the effort to educate myself, I got to understand the fundamentals a little bit more, and it did make me challenge, I suppose, my assumptions about our current monetary system. And then once I saw, what it could provide for me, that was my entry point, and it's my interest and curiosity has just grown from there.
Yeah. I had a very similar journey. What was some of the educational material resources that allowed you to change from thinking like Bitcoin's a scam, it's magic internet money, to, hey, we're going to sell our property in Bitcoin instead of holding on to real estate, which is the Australian dream here. We're going to hold this magic internet money. Was it like books or podcasts, or what was that information?
A combination, really.
The big one for me were podcasts. A couple in particular that they are, I suppose, pitched at normies. They want to get down to sort of the fundamentals in a relatable way. I found Lynn Alden's Broken Money really helpful as well, just kind of because that whole story originates from, what is money and what are the problems of money, and it doesn't really speak to Bitcoin until you realize there's a problem, and then Bitcoin is pitched as a solution. So that was a big part there for me.
And that's a big part when people ask us, well, what is Bitcoin? It's like you can't really explain Bitcoin until you explain the problem with money and inflation and the debasement of the currency. So people won't ever get Bitcoin until they understand the
problems that our current economic system faces. So you've almost got to be curious about what we're living in at the moment and start to question, well, what's going on? And when I get paid in fiat currency, how is that value shifting over, what is now a shorter period of time as well? And the idea of holding cash and what that means for your purchasing power. So I think, learning about all that stuff really opened my eyes to it. I think you're the same.
It was kind of funny because we did a bit of a survey of our mates to work out where they were at, a bit of a pulse check. And we got so many different responses from this is the future, this is the best thing since sliced bread, to all the way down to it's a Ponzi scheme. It was just really, really interesting to see the spectrum and people very quickly just to dismiss it.
Yep.
So I think for us, it's all about trying to get the Australian population to be curious, ask questions. Don't just hear something on the news and think that that's it. Do a bit of research yourself.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I'd like to hear your thoughts, but I think like the mainstream media narrative against Bitcoin, it's been pretty damaging, and it's that same rhetoric. It's magic internet money. It's a Ponzi scheme. And then on the flip side, they'll just push property, or property prices come down a little bit and everyone's panicking and stuff. But it does take a while. And I think one of the most important things that you alluded to is Bitcoin. It's not a 5-minute conversation. It is going to take time. You need to understand money. So since then, and becoming more educated, you're finding it easier to be able to get people to go down their own journey and start to read the books. And have you found a couple of ways to be able to, I guess, hook people into their own self-development?
I think you've had more success with that than I have.
I've had a couple of people call up, just not interested in buying the land as such, just curious about how they can go about it. They own Bitcoin and they want to sell property. They want to sell their property now and pretty much put a lot of their assets into Bitcoin, because we understand that it performs better than property over time. Then also, just obviously we're on Channel 7 News that you mentioned earlier, and a lot of people are now coming up to us and saying, hey, how do I get into it? What app should I download?
Yeah.
Do I have to have 155, 160K to actually buy Bitcoin? It's like, no, you don't. You can buy $10 worth. Just get started.
It's sort of flipped a bit. Like, it's gone from maybe trying to have conversations with friends, looking for opportunities, because you don't want to be that guy that's constantly just banging on about Bitcoin, even though I think
we're definitely that people.
Yeah,
we are those people, particularly at the gym. That's all we talk about at the gym.
But you've got to, I suppose it's about finding those opportunities. And that particular segment on the news just meant that more people in my life came to me to say, well, okay, you're very serious about this thing, and starting to get a bit more curious about it, rather than necessarily me trying to, impose my ideas and thoughts on them, and them just going, can you please stop talking? You're talking about it again.
Yeah. But now we're thinking we'll just get a Bitcoin sticker on our laptop and we'll just open it up and come and have conversations, because, Trudy's right. You really were looking for people that might be in that space that you could have a chat with, and you'd ask the question, and most of the time you'd be like, no.
Well, that was that. Like I said, that was me at the start.
Yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned the challenging, the Australian media sort of being pitched against it. That's been challenged too, particularly obviously with the American side of things at the moment. And I think that's also a lot of conversations with your mates as well, thinking, well, what is this Bitcoin reserve, and what's Trump on about, and all the rest of it.
I think there's a problem there too, though, that sometimes people are going to now associate Bitcoin with Trump, and Bitcoin is so much more than one person. So it's really important that, yes, he's a pro-crypto, and yes, he's going to accelerate the adoption rate of Bitcoin and potentially other cryptocurrencies. But it's not just him. It is way bigger than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Bitcoin truly does not care whether Donald Trump or the United States or any country creates a strategic Bitcoin reserve or they hold it on their balance sheet. But I think the brand or the awareness of Bitcoin, it's so big now that it's inevitable. Larry Fink, he switched gears, the largest capital allocator in the world. That slowly happens. We're starting to see banks, insurance companies, and now, Donald Trump's the second president to really run with it, embrace it, as well as the Kingdom of Bhutan. They'll mine it for a long time. But I want to dive into the property. So it's a block of land. It's located in... Can I read out the address, or do you? want me not to?
No.
Yeah, so 7 Magpie Street, Golden Point, Victoria. You're looking for like a Bitcoin only transaction. So my understanding, please clarify, is you bought the property. It had like an old miner's cottage that was fairly run down. The plan was to be able to renovate this cottage, Airbnb it out, realize that with maybe during COVID and stuff, builders are hard to get, building materials so expensive. It's just going to cost too much money. The rate of returns probably, after studying Bitcoin, it's not going to be as high as Bitcoin. So now you're trying to get rid of the banks, get rid of the real estate agents, and just sell directly in Bitcoin. Is that the short of it, or is there a bit more?
Nailed it, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, we had this grand idea that we were going to, bring that little property back to life, and it just didn't happen. And then we've got some plans now for 2 awesome townhouses. But the reality is, it's
a good opportunity in terms of if you were in the market for an investment opportunity and you had the capital, that's a very different story. We just are facing roadblocks in the sense that it's just not the right time for us to build. And so, we spitballed a few different scenarios, and this is one of those scenarios. So it's an interesting one because of all the scenarios I think we had in front of us. It's definitely the one that's attracted the most attention. So,
and I think the reality is, like, we wanted to sell it. We'd take the cash, we take the fiat, and we'd pretty much put it into Bitcoin. So we're like, well, let's just
go.
And I said to Trudy one day, I was like, this property is going to sit on the market for 6 to 12 months. No one's going to see it. Let's try and generate a little bit of a marketing strategy around it. Maybe we'll get a write up in the local news. Well, we went national, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, the reality is that, for us, we do have a bit of a property portfolio, but we'd now like to start putting our money into Bitcoin. And we'll probably see that over the course of the next, decade, 20 years, that there's going to be a shift of capital from the property market into Bitcoin.
Yeah. And then the other part of that too is, you don't need to convince us. We're all in on Bitcoin. And this was, I guess, an opportunity for us to contribute to its use, and sort of, improve the viability of Bitcoin as a currency, a unit of currency, and a storage of value. So, it's a just one where I think in our own little corner of the universe we can potentially just further that narrative.
Yeah, I love that, and I think. Because Bitcoin, for anyone that's watching that doesn't know, the main chain or the base layer of Bitcoin, it takes 10 minutes to settle. So the transaction time to buy a cup of coffee, nobody's going to wait 10 minutes. There are layers on top. But when you're selling something like a house or a plot of land, you're more than happy to wait for 10 minutes or 6 confirmations, an hour for final settlement. It's going to be heaps quicker than the banks. In reality... Sorry?
I'm not keen on waiting 30, 60, 90 days for a settlement in 2025 anymore. Like, let's speed things up a little.
It's absolutely crazy how antiquated the banking rails are. If you've still got your Bitcoin on an exchange or you're looking to take your Bitcoin security to the next level, I've partnered with the Bitcoin Way. They offer live help for setting up cold storage, running your own node, keeping your Bitcoin private, planning for the future, using multi-sig, and so much more. They never touch your keys. They will not touch your coins. Instead, they'll show you how to buy and keep them safe. If you want to make your Bitcoin setup safer, you can book a free 30-minute call and have a chat with them. Safe Dina Moose, the author of the Bitcoin Standard, Natalie Brunel, Preston Pish, and so many more recommend the professional IT cybersecurity team. Couple of outstanding things here. You can see they've been featured in Forbes, Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin Prague, Zero Hedge, Simply Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Safe Dean, the Bitcoin Standard podcast with Safe Dina Moose, Bitcoin News, obviously G'day Bitcoin for a long time. They're the world experts in helping people become self-sovereign. It's not just about protecting your Bitcoin stash. Yes, they will help you do that in a very easy to understand step-by-step process. But from there, they can help you secure your data. They are your personal cybersecurity IT experts. And then step number 3 is getting a second passport, a Plan B residency. The team, very cheap, very affordable for people that are looking to take their sovereignty to the next level. You can find out more about their services when you first log in to their website as well, they have got a free 3-minute quiz to allow you to check if you are doing your cybersecurity, your setup correctly. I urge everyone to jump onto the bitcoinway.com. I have put a link into the description for everyone. Could not recommend them enough. I've used them personally before I ever partnered with them for the channel, friends and family. They asked me to help them out. I'm like, go to the world experts. That is the Bitcoin way. So reach out to the Bitcoin way today. To set up the property and to be able to list it yourself and keep the banks out of it, keep the real estate agents out of it, how do you just go about doing it? Like, where was it listed? Are you using like AI tools and stuff to be able to generate the listings and to be able to help with a bit of the social media marketing strategy? Or like, what was, you got this bright idea, we're going to sell Bitcoin, we're either sell it in cash, we're going to buy Bitcoin, stuff that, let's get rid of the fiat, let's just buy it in Bitcoin. And then what happens?
Yeah, so, okay, jump in whenever. But essentially what we did is we just, first of all, wanted to put on realestate.com.au. You couldn't do it as an individual, so you had to kind of go through a little company and pay, I think it was $800 roughly.
Immaterial.
Yeah. And then we just used AI, like a bit of ChatGPT, told it, where the block of land was, how much it was, and it pretty much spat out the blurb about the property. We've got photos, it's a block of land, there's not many photos that you need to use. And then we just put it up through that way.
Yeah, and we've also got some mock-ups of what the properties would look like. So that got included into the listing.
Yeah.
So that's in terms of obviously listing the property, which obviously doesn't use any sort of blockchain technologies. It's more AI driven.
Yeah.
The banks piece is I suppose, the benefit here, because the idea would be that you wouldn't necessarily need to go through one. I think one of the friction points for us, and we're still working through the process, is then the conveyancing. So if you go back to sort of the traditional Section 32s and what that looks like, there's conversations that still need to be finalised in terms of what that looks like in terms of a Section 32.
Yeah.
But in saying that, we're working with the right conveyancer to make that happen.
Yeah. And people often ask, well, how much Bitcoin are you going to take to sell the land? Well, it's going to be based on the day that those contracts are signed. So the exchange rate, what is a Bitcoin worth, in 2 weeks' time when they sign the contract, that's what we'll settle for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like being around Bitcoin for a while and understanding that, yes, it is volatile. Like the next day after signing that contract, it could drop 10%, it could drop 36%. You're willing to take that risk. Risk. It's hard for me to say that it's a risk, knowing what I know, but are you happy to take the drop?
Yeah, absolutely. Because on the flip side, it could also jump 30% too, right? Like Bitcoin, if you're holding Bitcoin or any kind of cryptocurrency, it's like a roller coaster ride. You just hold on, close your eyes for a decade, open them in 10 years, and you'll have a smile on your face, I think. So,
and you've got to have this, you've got to have a lot of conviction, right? Like, let's say you did wake up the day after and it's dropped 30%. Well, I still have the same number of sats. That hasn't changed. Yeah. And that's what I value. So that's why we're pushing for a Bitcoin sale.
And we don't want to sell it the next day. Like this is a long-term hold for us. So, if it drops, big deal,
Yeah, absolutely love it. I woke up one day with dollar figure down like 50%, and you're like, oh, is it broken? No, it's not broken. Great. And then you can go out and buy more. But it's when people just hear about it and they come in. I think it's easier, instead of a Bitcoiner going to someone that's trying to sell a house and being like, hey, can I pay in Bitcoin? They're like, no, I think that's magic internet money, where you've got the property and then Bitcoiners can come to you. I think that's cool. If someone's interested in the property but they don't hold Bitcoin, are you letting them know that like where they can buy Bitcoin, or are you willing to take cash? You're going to like send them to a exchange, they can buy it and then they'll transfer that to your cold wallet? Or if they're like, I don't have Bitcoin, I'm actually interested in the property, I'll deposit fiat.
Yeah, look, if someone was going to offer fiat and the number was the right number, absolutely, we would push ahead for that. And the very next day, we'd be changing it. Like that. At the end of the day, we're going to finish in the same spot. I'd love to get there through Bitcoin only, but if the lens is through fiat, which then becomes Bitcoin, I'm not going to say no to that.
No.
Yeah. 100%. So like the laser mission is just focus on stacking the sats
as much as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. And you're saying that you've got like a little bit of a real estate portfolio. Do you think you'll convert all of it into Bitcoin over time, or you want it to generate cash flow just to be able to keep stacking and have more of a diversified portfolio?
So we're going to have different opinions on this one.
Yeah, so Trudy and I are
good.
very similar in a lot of aspects,
Yeah.
but I probably got a higher risk tolerance than Trude's.
Yeah.
And so
You're going to hold real estate.
Exactly. Yeah. No, so look, if I can just take a step back, I actually got rid of my super and went self-managed super fund at the start of last year, and it's all now in Bitcoin. And so now I'm looking at, okay, I've got a property in Melbourne. It's rented out at the moment. The 6-year rule kicks in at the start of next year. I'm thinking I don't have to deal with tenants. I don't have to pay land tax. I don't, so why not? And if I'm homeless in about 15 years, I might come and stay with Trudy.
Just before Trudy jumps in, what's the 6-year rule?
So the 6-year rule is if you hold like a primary place of residence and then you rent it out for 6 years, if you hold on to that and continue to rent it out as an investment property, you'll pay capital gains tax when it comes time to sell it. So to avoid capital gains tax, you probably want to sell it before you hit the 6-year rule.
Yep. Okay, cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
And Trudy, what's your approach? You're obviously going to hold on to that glorious real estate we love so much in Australia.
Yes is the short answer. It more comes from a perspective that property in particular is an investment in itself. It's designed to be rented, and for all intents and purposes, it ticks over, and I don't have to think too much about it. That's one aspect of my portfolio. I still think that I want to have a little bit of diversity in my portfolio. That's just a personal preference for me. So I'm happy to have that allocation in real estate. As well as maybe a couple of other little things. But as the value of Bitcoin appreciates, that there's a bit of a tipping point there, and I wouldn't be surprised if in maybe a year or two, the portfolio is such that the majority is in cryptocurrency. I should Bitcoin.
I love that. So just on that, like, what's the differences for yourselves between like Bitcoin and crypto, and why are you distinguishing Bitcoin, not cryptocurrency?
Yeah, again, it comes back to that educational piece in understanding what Bitcoin is versus what more broadly cryptocurrencies are. The fact that Bitcoin is not managed or owned by any particular entity, it's a protocol. It cannot be manipulated. You cannot, change the fact that there's only 21 million of them. The reality is for all the other cryptocurrencies, that's not the case. So there's definitely a game to play in the cryptocurrency landscape if you do want to educate yourself and, obviously find the trends and follow the narratives and memes and AI, and it's all there, and it's very, it's fun, and we dabble a little bit in it.
We do dabble in it, and sometimes we dabble. And Trudy will say to me, "I'm not going to buy any. I'm not going to buy any more altcoins."
Yeah. Again, if we go back,
I'm just Bitcoin, and then sometimes she's like, "I just bought Pepe." I'm like, "Wow, what the?"
Yeah. But if we go back to risk tolerance for a second, and I'll throw you under the bus. Mel will buy something, whatever, and throw money at it, and I'm like, "Why didn't you just buy Sats?" And on a good day, it's a great decision, and on a bad day, you think, I should have just gone all in. So
I think the thing there. Altcoins and crypto is really it's a kind of, you want to get quick, you want to get rich quick, right? Whereas Bitcoin, it's a multi-decade hold, you know. So you can have a little bit of fun and dabble, and if you go up 20-30% quickly, great, cash it out and then put it into Bitcoin. So
and it's fun to follow, like I said before, the narratives and what the coins, the utility that they provide, or whatever you want to call that. I mean, at the end of the day, you can question all that too, but it is just, I suppose, a little bit of fun. But the serious aspect of it is making sure that, the majority of it sits in Bitcoin, because ultimately that is what is, in my mind, allow you to grow your wealth over time.
Yeah, and it's funny, if you go the diversity, diversifying your portfolio, and we've been talking a little bit about, do you put your money in an offset account, or do you take all your money out of that offset account and put it into Bitcoin? The reality is I don't have any money in an offset account, because that's saving me, 7% per year, depending on what interest rates are doing. Put it in Bitcoin, the figure's way higher than 7%. So if I've got any spare cash, it's all in Bitcoin. Like if I could live off Bitcoin and transact in Bitcoin, that's what it would be 100% of the time. But unfortunately,
I like that.
it's not there.
It's not there yet, but I think it's moving quicker. I forget the name of the Bit Refill. They're like these cards, and you can send Sats, Lightning Main Chain, or whatever, and then you just add it to your Apple Wallet, and you can use Bunnings, Woolworths, Coles, etc. And just PayWave. But I think maybe over the next five years, Bitteroo as well. You can get I think it's a Visa debit card where you've got Sats in your account. It'll automatically change, and then you get rewards back. But yeah, it's not.
We've talked about that as well, though. But one of the problems for that is that the capital gains that you pay every time.
That's such an inhibitor.
So at the moment, it's better just to pay in fiat and any spare money.
I think there was
in Bitcoin and gold.
There was a story, and again, you'll have to fact check this. I think there was a story a while ago where maybe Marvel or maybe the MCG were offering crypto payments, for your food and beverages. And on paper, it looked really great. But the reality was that once you transacted it, you're going to be paying a premium in order to purchase that product because you are subject to capital gains. So, that's a huge friction point in terms of the adoption, I think. And that impacts us with our story and trying to sell this block of land as well. Until that's addressed. And it's currently being addressed in the States. There's conversations around, well, how do we go about it and do we tax it? So hopefully if there's some shifts over there, they'll funnel through to obviously Australia and other Western or all countries that use it basically.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I know the Libertarian Party coming out with something in March, so that'll be something definitely worth paying attention to. I believe they'll be dropping their Bitcoin policy. I think out of all the parties, I know they're minor. They're sort of running with it the most. I did see an exchange between Rennick, maybe I'm butchering it, but one of the senators is like, absolutely not. Why would we remove the capital gains tax from that and treat it as a currency? I think it's going to take a while, and my fingers are crossed that the states do it, and we put a bit of pressure on our politicians to change that. But I can't see it happening. I don't know, within the next 1 to 2 years.
The other part there is that obviously the central banks aren't interested. I mean, you can, recently Michelle Bullock obviously said there's no room for cryptocurrencies in the Australian landscape. I mean, for as long as you've got those opinions and attitudes driving the decision making out of those institutions, we're not going to see any meaningful change. So we are looking obviously to those political influences on Australia to make the first move, because once that starts to happen, the chips will start to fall. But this is a very long time horizon. I can't see it happening anytime soon.
Yeah. And I guess we're all young, so we've got time on our side, and we can sort of see the future, and Bitcoin's got a large part to play.
With the future as well, I suppose the good thing now, they're starting to become products where you can start leveraging or using your Bitcoin or your digital assets as collateral. That's a big part, is that, we have a Bitcoin portfolio. We want to go to the bank to actually borrow against it. So we could build these townhouses in Ballarat, but the reality is we have to sell it to be able to do that. And we don't want to sell Bitcoin. So there are starting to, products out there now that are
offering finance against your Bitcoin.
Which is awesome, because the more you stack over time, the more you can borrow. We talk about it being a future thing. I've got 2 young kids, and they know all about Bitcoin. We talk about it all the time. They think I love Bitcoin more than them, which is untrue. But I'm making them, put 20% of what they earn with their pocket money into Bitcoin. And so it's just about having those conversations around the table around money and, investing and things like that.
Yeah. When they're putting 20% aside into Bitcoin, are they putting 10 or 20% aside into cash as well, or they're just using Bitcoin now as their savings vehicle?
And when we're talking, 20%, we're not talking huge money here. We're talking, $6 and working out, well, what's 20% of that? Okay, well, that's going into, and they can't set up an account because they're under 18, but we've set up an account on a couple of different exchanges under my name and my wife's name, and that money will go to them over time. And so, we show them the app every now and then. They see it up, down, and we just talk about, well, that's just how it works. It's quite volatile. You might be up, you might be down, but it's a long-term play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
and so the
I like that.
Rest of it is cash and Australian dollars, so they can go and buy, more teddies to play with and things like that. So
that's like the dollar's losing purchasing power pretty rapidly, like 50%, the Australian dollar in the last 4 years. But day to day, as a medium of exchange, it still works pretty well. We don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. Just like a couple of rapid fire questions that may help people like interested to do the same thing. I guess I'll leave your contact links below. If anyone out there is interested in selling a property for Bitcoin, you can talk to Trudy and Mel to find out how they went about it. But what were some of the challenges that you've found so far?
I think I mentioned this earlier, but probably the conveyancing piece around how you set up your contracts. So again, looking for conveyancers that are willing and able to participate in this landscape, because there's obviously a lot of legal challenges there for them as well. So finding that partnership's really important. That was probably a big one for us.
Yeah, and look, we're not through to settlement yet as well. We're still working with people. There's been a little bit of an expression of interest, but that's part of why we're going down this path, is we want to know how it works and can it work, and if it does work, why don't more people do it if they're interested, and we might be able to help facilitate that. But at this point in time, it's still a real steep learning curve. If you think about Bitcoin, and when we talk to your average everyday people, we do feel like we know quite a bit. Yep. But when we get into the Bitcoin space and we're with people that have been invested in Bitcoin for over a decade, we realize how much we actually don't know. So we're still asking questions, we're still being curious, and we'll just continue to push the envelope.
Yeah, and I think Mel said it really well. We don't pretend to be experts. No. And I guess another it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And we did touch on this before, but because of the decision that we've made, it's incited a lot of conversation, and there's a lot of positive conversation and a lot of curiosity. But there's also a lot of people that are pretty happy to tell you, their opinion. And you can find yourself at some tricky spots because they really want to go you about the validity of Bitcoin. So it's really pushed me to kind of double down on, what it is I understand about it. And I suppose there's that sense of imposter syndrome a little bit as well. But at the end of the day, it's just strengthened my, I suppose, belief in it, and always happy to have a conversation with anybody who wants to have it. Yeah.
Yeah. I have sort of that same feeling as well. This like light bulb goes off and you're like, I can totally see Bitcoin. I understand. And yes, this is what I'm going to devote my resources, my time, my energy. This is what I'm going to save, and I'm going to keep stacking. It's an investment. It's a savings vehicle. But then to be able to communicate that to someone when they're having a go at you and they blatantly think it's a scam or a Ponzi scheme or whatever, you're like, no, it's not. Yeah, but then to be able to articulate that a whole lot more, and they're only going to give you 5 minutes, not 100 hours, which they need to put in.
I suppose in that sense, I don't know if this is the right word, but I kind of pity that person a little bit. Like, like you can think that, and that's great, but we're doing it. We're confident in what we're doing, and if you've got a problem with it, that's okay. And if you want to know, it was really funny that you mentioned the Ponzi scheme, because I looked up a bit of why is Bitcoin not a Ponzi scheme? I've got all these notes about why Bitcoin's not a Ponzi scheme. So if you're watching it and you're still unsure, do a bit of research. It's definitely not a Ponzi scheme at all, so.
And can I flip that too? You mentioned what are some of the challenges. I think one of the best opportunities is that it's helped us to identify those around us that are also into Bitcoin that maybe previously we weren't aware of, because it's kind of tricky to bring this stuff up, like you don't always know who's in and who's not. So it's been really interesting to network with some people that are actually close to me that I had no idea that they were in this space.
Yeah. And then people who just shut it down, and you're like, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up shortly.
To wrap it up, I think for anyone listening, if you think it's a Ponzi scheme or whatever, Mel and Trudy, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, unfortunately, Bitcoiners do pity you because you need to step outside your comfort zone. It will change your life over time, not straight away, but 100 hours. Final thoughts, ladies. It's been such a pleasure, and like well done for going national, for changing the conversation in Australia. It's people like yourself that can really move the needle forward, and it only may move that needle forward for 5, 10, 15 people, but to get more people asking questions and to put in the research and change their lives, and then that knock-on effect, I think that's amazing. So thank you, but I'll pass it over to you for your final thoughts.
Ooh, final thoughts. Oh, I just want to say thanks. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah.
Like, we love talking about it. As I said earlier in the podcast, we talk about it all the time. Our wives are overhearing about it.
Yeah.
So we go to the gym about it all the time, and we love learning. We are really curious people, and we're looking at how can we leverage it in different aspects of our lives as well.
Yeah.
And just.
Yeah, I think the other part there is, always keen to network with anybody that wants to have this conversation. We're obviously trying to do it through a real estate lens. I'd be so curious to understand how other people might be trying to integrate Bitcoin into their worlds, and what other avenues there are that I don't know about, and what else I could possibly be doing to sort of further the narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'll put your details again in the description for everyone to reach out. Mel and Trudy, such a pleasure. And I'd love to get you back on the show once you're finalised and let us know like what the whole process was and how smooth or what the hiccups and stuff were. I think that'd be a really interesting conversation.
Sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sean. Thanks for having us.
See you, Sean.
Thank you. Cheers.